His research interests include computational fluid dynamics, numerical analysis, and optimization. Published 9 papers in international conferences and journals. Established IC engines, metallurgy, strength of materials labs at Al Amir College of Engineering. Established solar energy lab and renovated wind tunnel lab at BMS College of Engineering. He has given various innovative talks on CFD. So I hand over the session to the Dr. Ramesh Kulluru Garu, and he will continue the session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you, sir.
So today's talk would be on governing equations primarily. So I hope that Professor B.V.S.S. Prasad might have given a prolonged introduction of what CFD is and what the process would be and how it would be. I'm not going to go with a presentation. I would like to have a kind of interactive session where I write the equations, everything, and then we can have a discussion if there are any doubts in between. So primarily, we will look at what happens in the process of computational fluid dynamics. So I'm just sharing my screen. Hope you can see a whiteboard over here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. I'm 1 second. I'll just adjust this in such a way that I can see what I'm writing. Actually. Fine. So we are interested in learning what is called computational fluid dynamics. In order to begin with the basic equations of computation fluid dynamics, I would like to let you know what are the prerequisites of this subject. This subject belongs to basically advanced fluid mechanics, advanced topic in basically applied mathematics. So we come under this category of advanced topic in applied mathematics. The prerequisite that any student who want to learn fluid dynamics or CFD are the following things. You need to have a thorough understanding of what is fluid mechanics. Sorry to say that I am aware of the syllabus of fluid mechanics that happens to be taught in most of the engineering colleges. That is very, very meager. We can't say fluid mechanics there. We can actually rename the subject as fluid statics. Not much of dynamics is being taught in that subject. So you need to upgrade unless you teach what I call the Navier-Stokes equations and some good solutions of Navier-Stokes equations. You can't call that to be a fluid dynamics subject or fluid mechanics subject. So you need to upgrade in that sense. So we need to understand what is called the subject of fluid mechanics thoroughly. Second thing is we need to understand. You need to understand basically differential equations. Sorry. In this differential equations, you have what are called ODE, ordinary differential equations, and partial differential equations. You need to understand both ordinary differential equations and partial differential equations. And under these categories, you have what are the called basically linear and nonlinear equations. So you have ordinary differential equations, partial differential equations, and linear nonlinear equations. Then we need to understand, we need to know, we need to have the knowledge of linear algebra. I'm not sure where these things are coming out. This is not from my screen. If somebody is doing that, please stop it. I'm not doing this actually. These lines should not come in.
Okay, participants, please don't mark anything on the screen. Don't touch the screen.
Okay, so you need to have, you need to know a bit of what is called linear algebra. Not bit of, you need to have in-depth knowledge of linear algebra. So having all this, these are the primary requirements to understand what CFD is. If people are sleeping, people are wandering here and there, please switch off your videos. It will be a disturbing act of it. So coming to the topic, so we have the following aspects of fluid mechanics. So these are the basic aspects that everyone need to understand, that we need to have. These are the primary subjects which you need to have at least. I can say that about 60 to 70% knowledge of these subjects to understand what's happening in CFD. Otherwise, it will be like it doesn't belong to the category of computational fluid dynamics. You come to the category of colorful fluid dynamics or cleverly forged data. So these are the other two definitions that CFD popularly are being used. So these are the three subjects you need to understand properly. So coming back to our basic session, we are actually looking at computational aspects of fluid dynamics. So you have two aspects here: the physics of the problem, physical aspects are coming from fluid dynamics, and the numerics coming from computational aspects. So these are the two combination of numerics and the physical aspects that are both are coming from what is called this entire thing will make what is called computational fluid dynamics. So let's look at what is computational fluid dynamics and why do you need this. So in total CFD, in actual CFD, we solve basically we have what is called governing equations. These governing equations are primarily all these governing equations are known to everyone. You have read and understood these equations in one or the other form in most of the subjects that you are looking at. Whether you do solid mechanics or you do fluid mechanics, you are from a heat transfer background, you are from fundamentally from mathematical background or any other engineering background. Irrespective of the background of engineering, the following equations are valid everywhere. It's only thing the form and the interpretation of the equations are different in due courses in the respective courses. Even these principles that we are trying to learn now are applicable in electrical engineering, electronics engineering, computer science engineering, irrespective of what engineering that you are looking at. These are valid, and they can be universally used in many of the fields that are being used and that are being pursued. So what are these governing equations? The first of the governing equations is what is called mass conservation equation. This mass conservation equation is also known as continuity equation. This is the first equation that we need to understand. I'm not going to derive what is this equation. I'm going to give this basic equation in a form that people are, most of the people are not aware of. So we'll write this basically in integral form. Integral form of this governing equation. Again, somebody is disturbing the screen. It looks very ugly. Please don't do that. So the basic governing equation is something like this. So integral d by dt of integral rho dv plus integral over the surface rho v dot n into ds equal to 0. So this is basically what is called mass conservation equation. The first term in this equation tells about the time variation of total mass in a control volume. The second term expresses the flux of the mass crossing the control surface. So I am using this term control volume and control surface. People who have the background of thermodynamics and engineering mechanics and fluid mechanics know the meaning of control volume and all those things. So let us understand this basic equation here on a simple diagram. So what we do is first we take a Cartesian coordinate system. We take a Cartesian coordinate system, x, y, and z. On this Cartesian coordinate system, we say that we have unit normals in the respective directions, unit normal vectors. This is nx, you have ny, and you have nz in the respective z directions, where we are considering the origin there. And we say that we have a control volume of interest. So this, let us assume that this is my control volume, a three-dimensional control volume of this is a control volume that of interest. This can be anything. This can be application. This can be your nozzle. This is your area of study. Basically, you can take the problem of interest. Problem of your interest. In any problem that you are looking at, the following equations are equation should be solved. So if we assume that there is a flow field in this control volume, you have certain flow that is happening. So the flow is coming inside the control volume and moving out with some velocity. Say suppose V in is the velocity with which it is coming, and V out is the velocity it is going out. And this control volume has a volume V, a volume say omega, capital omega, because we use V for the velocity vector. So we use volume this one. So, and let us assume that there's a surface on this volume. There is a surface patch, and for this surface patch, you have a unit normal vector which describes the direction of the orientation of the surface. So if you assume that you have a sphere, the sphere as a control volume, full volume of as a full volume, and you are saying that, and I'm looking at what is called the surface of the sphere. And if you draw a small patch on the sphere, and as the orientation of the as you revolve around the sphere, you see that the orientation of the surface changes. So there the surface area is a vector rather than a scalar quantity. So we are looking at a surface area vector, and we are saying that the flux of the mass that is coming through this surface vector. So if you say that the flow is coming through the surface vector with some velocity v, and we are looking at the projection of this velocity normal to the surface. So we can assume that, let us assume that you take a pipe and water is coming through the pipe. At the end of the pipe, end of the cross section of the pipe through which the water is coming, you assume an imaginary surface, and you see that you can draw a velocity vector. Suppose if the surface is at an inclination, the pipe surface is cut at a 45 degrees angle, you see that the water doesn't come straight perpendicular to the axis of the pipe, it moves at a particular angle. So that angle is the velocity. So that is the surface area. So always you see that the flux of the fluid flow moves perpendicular to the surface. So this integral here this integral tells me what is the amount of flux that is coming per unit area. Per area, because here this is the area that is you're looking at, NDS. So NDS will tell me the surface area. This is a surface area vector, and you have rho v. Rho v, if you actually calculate the dimensions for this, you'll get mass per second. So you have basically the amount of mass, the rate at which the mass is traveling per surface in a given second. That is the real indication of this vector. So this meaning of this, and the first term tells me that what is the amount of, so you have it is rho times volume. Rho times volume gives me the mass, and I'm integrating in the entire volume, so it gives me the total mass, and I'm looking at the rate of change of mass inside the control volume. So that means to say that this is the meaning of that. So the continuity equation says that the total rate of change of mass inside the control volume plus the amount of flux that is crossing the control surface should be equal to 0. So this you can apply for many things. For example, let us apply for fluid mechanics problem. So suppose you have a bucket and it has some holes at somewhere on the surface of the bucket, and you put this bucket under the tap and open the tap. What happens? So till we assume that the buckets are we'll draw this diagram and show what happens. So I have this bucket here, and I have certain holes over here, and water is allowed to pass from in this direction. So we see that till this point, as the time progresses, the volume, the water inside the bucket increases. As it reaches these holes, the water will be moving out. V out, so V out and V out. So this is a scenario looking. So this is V in. So you have a virtual surface over here. So you have a virtual surface over here, and water is coming in and water is going out. Now look at this. The first term says that you have, the first term in the control volume says that d by dt of rho dv. This is the term that you're looking at. So time rate of change of control volume. So if these vents are not available, then what happens? Whatever the water that is falling inside the bucket, you see that the water is rising inside the bucket. So the total mass inside the control volume is increasing with respect to time. So that's the indication that this term is representing. If the velocity that is moving out, if V out is greater than V in, that means the water that is moving out away from the bucket is more than the velocity with which it is coming in. Then we see that the level of the water inside the bucket keeps on decreasing. Okay, that means to say that this term, this term will be decreasing basically. If the V out is less than V in, then you see that this term is increasing. Okay, now what is the term which represents, which tells you that this is the flux that is happening? You are seen from the equation that you have rho V dot N ds. Now you look at these portions, along these portions, you have this term to be this term has some quantity. So it is not 0. In the other parts of the region, like in these regions, where I'm marking with blue right now, here this term becomes zero because velocity is zero. Velocity becomes zero because there's no flow from those surfaces. The velocity becomes zero, and we say that the entire flux term is become zero. The flux term here, flux is not zero here, flux is not zero here, and flux is not zero here, but they are moving. What happens to the direction of the flux? Then you should see that v dot n. So always we say that n is basically outward normal. That means you have a surface. Suppose you have a surface, something like this. Your n normal always points outwards to the surface. It is always pointing outwards. So if I have a velocity which is going out, I have v like this. Now what is v dot n? Which is Vn cos theta mod of v mod of n into cos theta. Mod of n becomes 1. Mod v gives you some velocity, magnitude of the velocity, and cos theta. Cos theta in this case is theta is less than 90 degrees. So cos theta is greater than 0. So you have a positive flux. So you have positive flux. The other way around, if you have a surface, which is something like this, you have a surface with outward normal, and in this case, the other case is the velocity is coming in the opposite direction. V is in the opposite direction, n is like this. So in this case, v dot n is less than 0, and your flux becomes negative. Flux is less than 0. So you see that the flux depends on the velocity vector on which you are looking at. So you have a positive flux and the negative flux, and you are looking at the time rate of change of that. We have saying that the time rate of change of mass as a quantity of the flux measured inside that. Now the same thing in the case of steady state conditions. Suppose that if the mass is not changing with respect to time, then my governing equation becomes integral rho v dot n into ds equal to 0. Now we know that anything which is integral after the integrate becomes, if you can integrate this kind of quantity, I'll rewrite this same thing, integral rho v dot dA. Here A is the area vector of the surface. This is equal to 0. And when you integrate this, you get what is called rho VA is equal to constant. So this expression you might have already seen this. So this is for steady state flow. Steady state flow. For a steady state flow, if you have velocity vector and density vector constants, and you integrate area, and the area becomes the total in which rho is constant and v is constant, and integral dA is my total area. Under these conditions, you get what is called the following equation, which is basically the mass constant. This is what you have been studying. If you say that the density is also not varying with respect to the spatial coordinates, then you have AV is equal to constant. This is what you have been using as A1V1 is equal to A2V2. But in fact, the meaning of this is you are saying that the total flux that is moving away from the control volume is remaining constant. Okay, so that means the total incoming flux is equal to the total amount of flux that is going out. So if you take the example of your bucket, saying that the amount of water that is falling inside the bucket is equal to the amount of water that is moving away out of the bucket. That means the total amount of water that is available inside the bucket remains as it is. So whatever the water that is coming in is going out. So this is the meaning of what is called the mass conservation. And for solid mechanics, people, they don't need to bother about these equations, because this equation is automatically satisfied. The density of the material remains constant. There's no movement of material as it is. if you consider the whatever the material that you're looking at as a, if you think whatever the aspect that you're looking as the material, that remain constant. So the time variation of mass is constant. There's no flux of the material, so you don't need to solve this equation. So that's why people coming from the background of solid mechanics doesn't need to bother about the following equation. But if you are seriously working in either fluid mechanics, either gas dynamics, either with gases, fluids, or the combination of fluids and gases, or even if you imagine that the fluid is there, present in the domain, then you need to solve this equation. This equation is called mass conservation equation. The same equation I would rewrite in terms of in the differential form. The same equation can be rewritten as we have dou rho by dou t plus del dot rho v equal to 0. So this is time rate of change of density rho, and this is called divergence of mass rho v, mass flux. So this is valid at a given point. So sorry. So what's the difference between this equation and the previous equation, integral d by dt of rho dv plus integral rho v dot n ds equal to 0. Both are identical. These two equations are identical. Only thing is this is valid inside a control volume in a region or a control volume. This is valid at every point inside the domain. At every point in the domain. So both say what is called the mass conservation. One is at a point, the other one is in a given region that you are considering. So that's the basic difference between these two things. So we'll take the if you rewrite this equation using chain rule, when you apply chain rule, you have rho del dot v, rho times del dot v plus v dot del rho equal to 0. I'm rewriting the same equation. This equation after applying chain rule. Chain rule, you get this equation, and dou rho by dou t plus v dot del rho plus rho del dot v equal to 0. This is what is called material derivative. Or substantial derivative, or total derivative basically. So this I can replace it by d rho by dt plus rho del dot v equal to 0. So this you get the following equation. The following equation can be written as del dot v is equal to minus 1 by rho d rho by dt. So this is the famous equation that this is basically the same equation that you have rewritten in terms of this form. If rho is constant or rho is not changing with respect to time, rho is a function of x. If rho is function of x, then you will actually get this. If we can't say if rho is constant, what we get is we have del dot v equal to 0, which is the governing equation for incompressible flows. So this equation here is valid for any flow field, any kinds of flow, any kinds of flow, whatever maybe kind of material that you want to use, irrespective of the material, whether you are looking at gases, liquids, or any fluids that you consider. You can consider any material that is possible in nature, which is compressible in nature. If you want to study the mass conservation of that particular material, then this is the equation that you need to use. And this is the equation that you need to use in either this or this, in whatever the approach that you are following. But if you have a material whose density is not varying with respect to time, with respect to time, that means if it is incompressible, you are saying that density variations are minimal, very minimal, in such a way that we can neglect them. Under such situations, we have what is called del dot V equal to 0, which is nothing but your governing equation. Now, if you expand this del dot V, if V is my velocity vector, in Cartesian, we are looking at Cartesian coordinate system. So I'll write in Cartesian framework, we have V as Ui plus Vj plus Wk. This is my velocity vector. So my del dot V becomes dou u by dou x plus dou v by dou y plus dou w by dou z. And this should be equal to, so this is basically what is called divergence of velocity. So you are talking about mass conservation equation under the assumption of incompressible flow conditions. You see that my mass conservation has become an equation, a partial different combination of velocities, divergence of velocities. If you are looking at one-dimensional flow, for 1D flow, you have dou u, or 1D flow, you have du by dx equal to 0. When you integrate it along the x, you say that u is constant. So this makes sure that the velocity should remain constant in that particular direction. So that's the condition that you get. So you're saying that in incompressible flow limit, my governing equation, the mass conservation equation, becomes a constraint. This becomes a constraint rather than a governing equation. So this is the whole point of a mass conservation equation. So let's go back and look at what we have seen. We have seen that for a mass conservation equation, I need to solve this equation, and this is the form of. We have seen that this equation has two components, and to clarify here, we are assuming that there are no source terms, no sources. Sources in the domain. When there are no sources in the domain, when I'm saying that there are no sources in the domain, that the mass is not getting created. So if you have, or mass is not getting destructed. So if you have mass creation and mass destruction, as in the case of nuclear reactions, where new species can be created and some species can get destroyed, then the same equation is not valid as it is. You can't apply the same equation. There are some modifications that you need to bring. Instead of the right hand side become 0, you get a source term over here, S, where that S will take care of the destruction and the creation of the mass inside the control volume. So if you don't have sources, where they're saying that whatever you're just plainly looking at the mass that is coming in and the mass that is going out, and you're just looking at the variation of the mass inside the control volume, then you can directly use this equation. And we see that this is valid at a given control volume, and you have the same equation. This is the following equation, which is valid at a given point, and this is valid in a given control volume. So this is the kind of equation that you look. This is basically what is called the mass conservation equation. So this equation should be solved with along with all other equations that you are going to solve in computational fluid dynamics. So let us look at the second equation. The second equation that we are interested in is in basically what is called the momentum equation. The momentum equation, I'll simplify this equation to say that this is nothing but your basically the second law of motion. Second law of motion, or the Newton's second law. We know that Newton's second law says that the force applied on a given system should be equal to rate of change of momentum. So this is so P by P, or we'll rewrite this as, instead of P, I say the force acting, the summation of all the forces acting on a given system. We know this. This is equal to rate of change of, this is the Newton's second law. We just rewrite this equation in the form that we wanted in the case of fluid mechanics. For fluid mechanics, the same equation happens to be, if you rewrite the same equation, you will have this. We have the time rate of d by dt of rho v dv plus integral over the surface. This is over the control volume. This is over the control surface. Rho v into v dot n ds. This should be balanced by the summation of all the forces that are acting on the given system. So, you know, rho times dv gives me mass. Mass times velocity gives me the momentum. So this gives me the momentum. This is the total. This gives me the total momentum in the control volume. And you are looking at time rate of change. So the first term says that the time rate of change of total momentum inside the control volume. As I said that the mass is crossing the control surface. As the mass is traveling, mass has certain amount of inertia. So as an inertia, material with inertia is moving, it has some velocities. When something has some velocity, we have momentum. So as the mass is moving through the surface, you are looking at mass flux. Since it is carrying some velocity with it, you'll have momentum flux. So this tells me the net momentum flux crossing the surface. So this is basically embedded inside this integral, the time derivative. Basically, this is a total derivative. Total derivative. So this should be balanced by what are called the forces that are acting on the system. Now, so the right hand side of the system is clear. We know that there is a certain amount of momentum that is changing inside the control volume, and there's a certain amount of flux that is crossing the surface, momentum flux that is crossing the surface. So we would like to know what are the forces acting on it. So if you look at the forces that are acting on the surface, the forces can be classified into two categories. One is called the surface forces. The other category are coming from the body forces. Body forces or volumetric forces, volume forces. So the category from the surface forces, you have what is called pressure. Because in fluid mechanics, pressure plays a major role. So you have pressure force that is coming. Under the body force, you have gravity. That means these forces act in the entire control volume. That means suppose you have a control volume something like this, and I have a surface. My pressure force acts only on the surface. only on surface. It doesn't act inside the control volume. But my gravity force acts on the every particle inside the control volume. You take every particle, you'll see that is supposed to gravity force. So mg, the weight of the object that you're looking at. So you have surface forces and the body forces that are come into picture. And to incorporate these surface forces inside in the governing equation, we know that we have pressure as the gradient of the pressure, del P. This is a gradient of pressure which acts as a force, and you have del dot rho g, the divergence of the this force that comes into picture. So these two terms gets added to that equation. So you have d by dt of integral rho. Apart from these two things, you have what is called forces coming from viscosity. For viscosity forces, I'll say viscosity forces. You should not say that, but to just give brief. So we'll see what it is. We have dv plus integral over surface. This is over the control volume. This is over surface. Rho v v dot n into dA is equal to minus over all the surfaces gradient of P P N dA, or we'll say P N dA. My plus integral del dot tau plus this is over the control volume, this is over the volume, plus integral over the entire control volume. You have del dot rho g. So these are coming from pressure. These are the following forces that you have. This is basically viscous forces, and tau basically shear stress tensor. In stress tensor, you have basically normal stresses and shear stresses, both. And the body forces. So this becomes the momentum equation. So you have in the left hand side, you have what is called the rate of change of momentum inside the control volume, which has both flux traveling balanced by the forces that are happening. This is nothing but the Newton's law. This is equivalent to this equation. Both are one and the same. There's no difference between these two things. So this equation and this equation are the same. We are just writing in a different form. So this is valid for in any control volume. So we need to solve apart from the momentum equation. We need to solve. Now here V has components as Ui plus Vj plus Wk. So this equation represents basically three different equations, one in each direction. So it will be very difficult if you look at in integral form. Let us rewrite the same equation in differential form. This is valid for any control forces. Now, if you rewrite this in differential form, you have dou of rho v by dou t plus del dot rho v dyadic of v is equal to minus del p plus del dot tau plus you have del dot rho g. So if there are no body forces, let us simplify this. We say that no body forces. So this becomes 0. The third body forces will be there. Viscosity is inviscid flow. inviscid flow, which means that viscosity is negligible. So this term becomes 0. If you say that steady flow, you get this becomes 0. This term becomes 0. What you get is del dot rho v cross v minus is equal to minus del p. This is nothing but your Euler equation. Euler equation with steady state Euler equation with no body forces. So if you consider body forces, you will get rho g here, del dot rho g. Yeah. So rho g here. So this is basically Euler equation. And when you integrate this on streamline, integrate this equation along streamline, you get what is called Bernoulli's equation. So Bernoulli's equation, you are looking at basically the momentum equation integrated based on some assumptions along the streamline, only valid along the streamline. It's not applicable in the entire domain. Whereas the basic governing equation, this basically this is valid at any given point. This is called differential form. And you have what is called integral form. So this is your basically the momentum equation. The third equation that we would like to look at is basically energy equation. This is basically, this also everybody knows it. This is nothing but your first law of thermodynamics. So the first law of thermodynamics, you have to rewrite in the other form. So we define what is called the total energy, ET, which is nothing but total energy, which consists of kinetic energy plus potential energy plus internal energy. If you define this as this, we write it as rho ET, the total energy per unit mass. So total energy, per unit mass. So you have in U square plus V square plus W square by 2 kinetic energy plus G, Gz as potential energy plus E as total internal energy that you have. So if you have to rewrite the energy equation, so you have d by dt of again in the control volume rho Et dV plus integral over the surface rho Et into V dot and ds. So this is your total internal energy. Now what does first law of thermodynamics say there? You have Q minus W is equal to du, which is the simplest way you rewrite the first law. So this term is nothing but du that you are looking at, the change in internal energy of the system. Okay, or total energy of the system. Now the right hand side, if you have to balance this, you need to write about the heat transfer and the work done. Now work done is coming from forces. When we know that the rate at which work done is nothing but force times velocity. We have seen that in momentum equation, we have two types of forces, pressure forces and viscous forces, and body forces that are coming into picture. So let us neglect body forces as it is. So you have majorly pressure forces and viscous forces. So the work done is coming through the pressure forces and viscous forces. So if you have to rewrite that, so the work done by pressure force is nothing but integral del dot PV d omega over the entire. This is work done by pressure forces plus integral del dot tau dot V d omega. This is viscous forces, and you have integral del dot Q, which is the heat transfer, equal to 0. So work done by pressure force work done viscous force and the heat transfer, heat conduction. Basically, you have Fourier's law, basically. Law of heat conduction that you are looking at. So this is your energy equation. So I'll name this as 3, this equation as 2, and this equation as, this equation as 1. So in CFD, we solve 1, 2, and 3 simultaneously. It's not that you solve mass equation, then substitute that into momentum equation, and then substitute it into energy equation, and then solve it. You can't do that. You have to solve all these 3 equations simultaneously. Then only you can get answers. Now let us look at what's the big deal in solving these things. So the first question to ask in any of the courses that you look is, can we solve these equations? Can we solve these equations? So we know that how many equations you have. For mass conservation, we have one equation. The variable is density. The outcome of the variable is density. So equation number, we will say equation number, variables, number of variables that we are looking at. So mass conservation equation, we have one variable, which is density. We are solving for density there. Momentum equation, you are solving for U, V, W. So you have 3 equations there. So these are the 3 variables that you are solving. Sorry, U, V, W. You have 3 variables there. In the energy equation, you are solving for internal energy. Basically, since you have rho density here, you are solving for internal energy. You are solving internal energy, which is basically E. One variable and E. So we say that this is a scalar equation, and this is a vector equation, and this is a scalar equation again. So mass conservation is a scalar equation, momentum is a vector equation, and energy conservation is a scalar equation. So how many variables are there? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 variables are there. But if you go back and look at your equations, here you have density and velocity. So once you saw for solving, why do you need coupled approach for solving these equations? So in mass conservation equation, you have density and velocities. So you need to have equations for velocities. So let us look at momentum equation. Momentum equations have velocities, but apart from velocities, you have what is called pressure and stress, basically P and tau. These are unknown variables. So when you are solving for mass and momentum, you have 2 more variables which are unknowns, P and tau. And when you are solving for energy equation, you have rho et. Rho et has velocities, internal energy, and this is a new variable. Internal energy is a new variable that is coming here. But you have density and velocities that are coming from momentum equation. Pressure is also coming from momentum equation. Stress is also coming from momentum equation. And you have additional variable called Q. We know from Fourier law, Q depends on temperature. So you don't have any, and E depends on temperature. So you don't, basically energy equation is solving for temperature. So you have temperature here as a new variable that you are introducing. So E, T or E. So we have 5 variables. Rho, U, V, W, T, and P. These are the 6 variables that goes, 6 variables. And we have 5 equations. So we know that we have more number of variables than the equations. We know that we can't solve these equations. So as such, unless you model, you have different other models, other assumptions and models coming into picture, you can't solve these equations. So what are the equations? What are the models that we have? So for tau, we have what is called viscosity stress tensor. Basically, we say tau ij as mu times dou ui by dou xj plus dou uj by dou xi minus 2 by 3 delta uk by dou xk del ij. This is the model for tensor. That is stress tensor. Stress tensor is proportional to velocity gradients. I don't say proportional, as a function of velocity gradients. So the variable stress tensor tau can be related to velocity gradients. So if you can solve for velocities, find their gradients, you can relate this to this. And if you use this particular model, the momentum equation and the mass conservation equation is the combination of to be known beforehand before solving computational fluid dynamics. Now, are you solving all these equations for all the problems that are in your hand? We are saying that we can't solve all these equations for all the problems. Based on assumptions, certain equations will go off. So, but we need to solve mass, momentum, and energy conservation. Suppose you are looking at only adiabatic flow. If you are looking at adiabatic flow, the temperature variations are not there, so you don't need to solve energy equation at all. So you can remove energy equations separately. So that's not become a problem. But if you are solving a fluid flow problem, you are supposed to solve for both momentum and mass. These two equations should compulsorily solve. So suppose if you neglect viscous forces, there are no forces coming from viscosity. There is no body forces. There is no effect of gravity on the flow field. And if you are looking at an unsteady flow, the time variation is not there. Then you remove it. This is the simplest of all the. This is one of the simplest of all the ways. Then you are solving these following two equations. Then you are saying that you are solving rho v dot n ds equal to 0, and you have rho v dot n ds is equal to minus del p, minus integral del p. These two equations you are solving, but still here the density is the function of space and spatial coordinate. So this is also not simply easy to solve. So further, if you assume that the density is constant, then you say that you remove density from this, then you are only to solve that you have only one equation to solve this momentum equation, and the mass conservation becomes a constraint. So you have to satisfy that constraint at least. So that constraint, you can't say that I have this constraint, but I can neglect this constraint. You can never neglect that constraint when you're solving for an incompressible flow. So for compressible flows, you need to solve all these equations. If you are not looking at energy changes, then you should solve only mass and momentum equations. And further, if you simplify all those things, you end up with what is called the equation something like this. Which is basically momentum equation in one dimension, and this is nothing but your Euler equation. This is your Euler equation. You integrate this along the streamline. You can't integrate everywhere. If you can integrate only along the streamline, you get what is called the famous Bernoulli equation. So if you look at the assumptions of the Bernoulli equation, you should have the flow to be steady. You should have the flow to be incompressible. You should have the flow to have no body forces. you should see that the velocity gradients exist only along the streamline, and what else? It should not be irrotational. So all these 5 assumptions should get satisfied simultaneously. Under these conditions, Euler equation is valid. But in nature, in flow, all these assumptions are not simultaneously possible. So Bernoulli's equation is just a myth. You are applying blindly to guess a rough estimate, but in natural, Bernoulli's equation doesn't actually exist. It is based on so many assumptions that you get, and after that you'll see that the Bernoulli's equation gets happen. So otherwise, it's only a simple equation that you need to. It's a simple equation that you can ignore that basically. So this is basically the set of equations. Let me show you. Stop share. How do I show these equations? Stop this here. Screen share. Yeah. So hopefully, I think everybody is seeing the desktop with the equations.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So these are basically the compressible Navier-Stokes equations, which I have been telling you: the mass conservation equation, the momentum conservation equation, the energy conservation equation, and if you neglect viscosity, you end up with what is called a set of equations, which are Euler equations. So these are the two sets of equations that are very much solved, very much used in solving the governing equations. So if you solve this viscous, these are compressible effects. These are inviscid equations, but still the compressibility effects are important. Why are the compressibility effects are important? Because gas at some points, if you look at high speed flows, there is a flow, the fluid velocities reaching the speeds of Mach number more than Mach are equivalent to Mach at Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3, or at Mach 4 or higher than higher Mach numbers. What happens is most of the flow field is behaves as an inviscid flow. The viscosity effects are only near the boundaries or the walls. The rest of the fields are inviscid. The inviscid effects viscous effects are not felt. So under these conditions, then you don't need to solve the complete set of Navier-Stokes equations. You can just solve the compressible Euler equations and then get out of it. You get beautiful answers for that, and they are pakka valid. Suppose you are looking at a flow on a re-entry vehicle that is coming at Mach 6. If you look at the re-entry vehicle, the boundary layer thickness will be of order of mm's. Say suppose 2 mm, 3 mm maximum. But if you look at the entire flow field with the entire space. So when compared to the length scale of the flow field, the boundary layer effects are felt only within that short region. But that short region boundary layer flows are also very much important, because within that short span of the boundary layer, the viscous effects are so high. The friction effects, the friction that is coming through the work done because of shear stress is so high that it can burn the vehicle. That's what happened to this vehicle, where the friction has become so large that it even burned the vehicle. So those 5M things are also very much important. But if you are not interested, if your primary concern is not the heat transfer there, if you are just looking at the flow field, the entire flow field over there, you don't need to solve the Navier-Stokes equations. You can just solve the compressible equation and get the complete picture of it. Further, if you want to look at the energy effects, you introduce the Fourier, then you have to solve the complete Navier-Stokes equations. Now, what's the difference between these two set of equations? Navier-Stokes equations are not scale dependent. They are scale dependent, basically. That means in fluids, we have different kinds of scales. Length scales. There are two kinds of, if you categorize scales, they can categorize in two broad categories: length scales and time scales. One varying with respect to time, one varying along the space. And for Euler equations, the equations are scale independent. You don't have scales there. The scales in the fluid flow comes because of the viscous terms. This tau, del dot tau, the divergence of the tau and the viscous work done. So this tau dot V is basically the one which creates the friction inside the fluid flow. So when we say friction, it's not about two materials rubbing inside the fluid. The friction can also happen every material will have friction. So air also has friction. So when you're moving at high speeds on your bike, you feel that somebody is rubbing on your face. The air as it is moving, though air, the density is very less at 1. As it is moving at high speeds, it can create so much of friction that you can't take the speed. That's why you see that though you are moving at high speeds on a very cushioned, comfortable car, the moment you stop, you actually be very tired. The tiredness is because you are moving in a material which is actually providing you the friction. So you should look at all these things while in your real life, day-to-day life, and see what's happening there. So these are the terms which causes the work done. This is the heat conduction, and the work done by pressure. Pressure also does the work because pressure gradient is the force that is acting. So force times the velocity gives the rate at which work is done. So this gives me you have P times V dot N. This gives a work done due to pressure. This is the Fourier heat conduction, and this is the work done by shear stress that is happening here. So these are the basic equations that you solve for any fluid flow. So when you are working on an ANSYS, say suppose you are working on a software, be it an ANSYS, be it an SU2 code, or being an open form code that is being available for free, whatever the code that you're actually working on for the problem that you're looking at, these are the equations that are being solved behind. So there's a whole complexity of the code and the equations that are behind your screens that are running on the computer, and you see beautiful data that is coming out if you are looking at. Now, if you look at this, these are just basically equations. When you solve these basic equations, we need what is called boundary conditions. So for every problem, this is a blind notion that everybody has to remember whoever is using a CFD as a primary tool. The amount of information and the amount of boundary conditions, the accuracy with which you prescribe the boundary condition will determine the accuracy with which your solutions that you are getting in. If you give a wrong boundary condition, obviously you'll get a wrong solution. You can't blame the software. So before blaming the software or blaming your results, ensure that for the given problem that you are solving, what are the basic governing equations that you are looking at? Are the governing equations correct? What are the boundary conditions those governing equations require? And why do you require such boundary conditions? And then when you're solving methodologies are also very different. Not all equations can solve in the same framework. Incompressible equations will have a different way of solving it. Compressible equations will have a different way of solving it. They can't go in one go. So in a CFD software, when you say a CFD software, you have when it can solve for both incompressible, compressible flows, when it can solve for multi-component flows. A multi-component in sense, suppose you are analyzing exhaust gas, and in the exhaust gases you have different components of gases that are there, and you wanted to analyze the species. You are not solving these equations again there. There you have, for each species, you have one set of equations there. So n number of species, n sets of equations will be there. So the solution strategies, the solution methodologies, and the solutions, the conditions that you need to prescribe for those flows are entirely different from what you are prescribing for the set of equations that you are seeing on the screen. Okay, so what is the problem that you are solving on hand, and what are the basic equations, what are the governing conditions, and what are the ways you can solve, the best ways you can solve those equations. You need to have an idea of all these things, and then when you choose this particular software, you might get a better results. Otherwise you get some numbers. So see, one thing you need to remember is computer is just an idiot box. The number you feed in, the process you choose, the number it spits out to you is totally related. So if you give a proper number, proper equations to choose, it churns out properly and gives you an accurate result. Otherwise, it gives you random numbers. And all the numbers that you get from a computer or a software, you can't believe blindly. So you need to first do the validation studies, get the confidence of the software to what extent it can be done, and then use that particular software to the use that you, whatever the use you want to do. So given the time framework, I think I've covered most of the equations and most of the stuff. I think I'll stop it here.
Sir,
I
sir,
think I'll
there
stop
are
it.
few questions from the participants.
Yeah. I'll 1 second. I'll address. I can address them.
Sir, ఇక్కడ లింక్ కొట్టండి, నేను ఎంటర్ కొట్టండి.
Okay.
Start.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
First question.
Sir, one of the question posted by Khushbu Garu is which equation was used for micro-channel flow analysis?
Okay, that's what I've been telling you. So there is no hard and fast rules that these equations are used. So suppose if you are looking at microchannel flow, these equations are valid only in continuum range. I hope most of the faculty understand what is continuum. There is a region in the continuum. There is a region in the space, set of length scales in the space wherein these equations are valid. Apart from if you are working below that region, then if the continuum assumption is not valid, then these equations are not valid. So you need to actually solve for them in a different way. So for suppose if your geometry size is in micro or nano levels, then I probably doubt that you can't use this continuity, momentum, and energy equation in this form. There's other form of it which you are supposed to use. Most probably, I think the lattice-Boltzmann methods, the other methods like lattice-Boltzmann methods, and what is that? The other method, the famous method at molecular level, you can use molecular dynamics to use those things. Suppose if your geometry is in the continuum regime, suppose, then these equations are valid. Then you should understand that what is the kind of fluid that you are using. If the compressible effects or the density variations in the microchannel is valid, they are important, then you can directly use this equation as it is. If the density variations are not that great, then you can't use these equations. You should use incompressible equations. The density variations are not there. So based on the problem, the set of equations also might change, but the overall framework will sit in this three equations only. So we don't know. I think, so suppose in microchannel, if you are not looking at heat transfer effects, you are not passing heat, the energy equation is totally, you can remove the total energy equation. And so let us suppose that density is also not there. Then you are solving only the momentum equation with constraint coming from the mass conservation equation. And if you look at the variables, you have suppose only in one dimension, you are looking at only in one dimension, you have one equation and two variables. So you can't directly solve those equations. You have to write another equation for pressure Poisson and solve those set of equations. So that's what I said completely. You can't say that I pick up a problem from a textbook or some place. I choose a software that is in my hand and ask the question, can I apply directly to this? First, identify yourself. What are the problems that is there in your hand? So whatever the problem that you have, Yeah, and choose what are, you have to first decide what are the governing equations that you are trying to solve. Without the knowledge of those governing equations and the conditions in the problem that you are solving, please don't venture into what is called CFD. Then you'll get some crazy results, some numbers, crazy numbers, which doesn't have any meaning.
Sir, another question which is related to this only. What about the radiative transfer equation in case of simulation of solar air heaters?
Okay.
How this
So
equation, how this equation is to be framed for specific application?
yeah. So if you want to add up heat transfer, radiative heat transfer, here the del dot Q that is there in energy equation, I just solved only for conduction equation. There you have to consider for radiation also. Then what happens is the nature of this equation completely changes. So the methodologies that you directly use for solving these equations may not work there. So you need to create your own methodologies there to solve. So here the Q, I just used only Fourier conduction only for explanation. Instead of Q for conduction, you should be adding more terms here in that. So see, essentially the third equation says the energy equation. So how do you add up the radiation energy into the first law of thermodynamics? If you can figure it out, you just add the similar terms in this equation and then solve this equation.
Another question
We
from
cannot.
okay,
Yeah.
sir. Another question from Satya Srinivas Babu Garu. What is the difference between applied magnetic field and induced magnetic field?
I am not sure. I don't know.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question from Bhushan, sir. When to use Rand's equation?
Okay. Oh, so I think these things will be covered by Professor Patnaik, sir.
Yes.
One second. Let me. I have a presentation, my old presentation, which I'll show you. That will clarify. That should clarify this. It's not. Where is that? One second. Okay. Okay, I'll screen and explain this. I thought Prasad Patnaik sir will deal with this topic, so I didn't present this. Where's the Zoom? Wait, I'll share the screen. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The main methodology is to simulate turbulence. You can see the slide. Whoever asked the question, you can see the slide. See, when you are solving these equations, you have what are called scales. This is what I meant scales. Scales are nothing but the regions in which the energy interaction takes place inside the fluid flow. So you have large scales and different kinds of scales. So you have bigger scales and the smaller scales. So energy transfers from larger scale to smaller scales during interactions, during vortex stretching and all these things. So if you can resolve all these scales on a grid, then you directly, if you can resolve the smallest scale on the grid, then you are solving the Navier-Stokes equations directly. So that is called direct numerical simulations. When you create a grid of particular size, you assume that the grid is like a filter. Okay, so the maximum possible eddy that you can actually resolve on a given grid size is the size of the grid. But eddies can still exist of the size lesser than the grid. So if you neglect them, you are not resolving them. So that is called, that regions are called LES. And Reynolds average RANS equations are nothing but those grids which you are looking at a particular model. So to what extent you are resolving the scales in a given flow field depends on what equations that you are solving. So all these direct numerical simulations or large eddy simulations or RANS equations, they are solving the same set of equations. But at some point of time, there is a cutoff. At that cutoff, from that cutoff to the lower length scales, there's a model that you are trying to incorporate. So based on the model that you will incorporate, you either are solving RANS equations or LES, or directly, if you are not doing any cutoff, then you are solving direct DNS basically. So suppose if you are solving a flow field on a grid size of 100 million, even then you are not resolving all the scales. But you have to ask the question, do I have the size of the computer where I can have 100 million grid points? And I doubt that most of the solutions are not at that levels. Okay, so it's highly a tedious task that you solve basically DNS. So most of the times we use Reynolds average equations. That is, you average the same set of equations on time scale and length scale, and do the modeling for the rest of the terms. I think those things Prasad Patnaik sir will discuss, the modeling of turbulence and all this stuff. So why do you need modeling, essential modeling and all these things? I think that's the topic of his choice. So you'll get to know what is Reynolds RANS equation and all this stuff there. So, but because of this, the grid size and the models that the rest of the scales that you are modeling there. So they tell you what equations that you are using there.
Okay, sir. We'll move on to the last question, sir. The question asked by participant, it is, sir, in thermosiphons, or heat pipes, the flow is multi-phase flow.
Yeah.
Can we use the above equations? In this, heat transfer is present.
This, you can use this, but that rho, the density there you're using is not the pure fluid. The density, the energy, the velocities are for one liquid here.
Yes.
So either you use a mixture equation model, or you can use a multi-component model there.
In continuation, sir, which method to use?
FDM?
Yeah, FDM, FEM?
No, those are the methodologies. See, there are two things. You have equations. Based on the nature of the equations, you have methodologies.
Yes.
So you need to understand, you need to first choose the equations and then the methodologies. You can't go directly switch on from one to the other. So first choose equations, look at your geometry. If your geometry is very complex in nature, you can't apply finite difference method. You can go to finite volume or finite element method. If you want to have compressible effects and higher accuracy, you can't use finite element method. You can only do finite volume method there, and higher order finite difference methods. And if your geometry is complex, again finite difference method can't be used. You should use only higher order finite volume methods. So there are whole host of complications. Whatever we have present is just the surface, not even the 1% of the tip of the iceberg. We have just said that these are the set of equations that any general fluid flow can be. But if you are doing multi-phase flows, these equations can be used, but the meaning of the density, velocity, and the energy will change accordingly. Like they can be a mixture of rho can be a mixture of density, velocity is a mixture velocity, and energy is a total mixture energy of the system. And further, you have to divide what is the component of each thing that is being played there. You need to have further equations for that. So as of, I guess, you have n components. So suppose you have n components in that multi-phase flow, n different fluids, then n times all these equations will get multiplied. And
Okay,
they
sir.
should have, you should know the relation between each component also.
One last question, sir. If only if your time permits.
Yeah, fine. I have
Sir,
time.
do you think anyone can solve 3D Navier-Stokes equation? I mean,
Yeah,
complete
if,
solution. The equation should include pressure term and viscous
yeah,
fluid.
yeah. You can. People are solving. There are hundreds of people who are solving that.
Yes.
But only thing is, how well you resolve the scales. To what extent the solution is correct is the question that you ask. See, there are codes. There are different types of codes that and different methodologies that CFD people use in solving these equations. This is one set of methods that we are discussing here. There are lattice-Boltzmann methods. There are molecular dynamics based methods. There are particle based methods. You can solve equations using finite discontinuous Galerkin based methods, the finite element combination of finite element finite volume based methods, and there is a whole host of problems that you can actually solve. Where people are solving it, that's not a big deal.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. On behalf of Bharatiya Vignana Mandali and all the participants and all the organizing institutes, I thank you very much for your valuable time spending
Yeah.
here and for
Uh,
giving all your informative session.
Yeah, I think tomorrow morning session we have
Yes, sir.
finite difference and finite volume method.
Yes, sir. We will be
Uh,
meeting tomorrow morning also.
yeah, and
Yes.
I'll explain a little bit of methodologies basically there.
Okay,
I'll
sir.
I'll give a brief list of methodologies and associated frameworks that
Sure, sir.
people use to solve them. Okay, so don't be in a state saying that. Uh, Whatever the software that you have at your college or whatever the software that you have at hand can solve all the problems in CFD. CFD is a vast subject. We have not even explored 1% of what that subject is all about.
Okay, sir.
So it takes a lifetime to look at what this method. But if you have a problem in your hand, first understand for the given problem, what are the governing equations? First understand the physics mathematically. That's nothing but your governing equations. Then look at what available methods are there available to suit those equations and try to solve those equations. And that's how you can actually get uh, pretty good results. Yeah, I can see somebody's asking about non-Newtonian fluids. Yes, you can use non-Newtonian fluids, but the only thing is the nature of stress tensor tau. The modeling of tau changes there. The model I given in this presentation, where tau is proportional to the velocity gradients, is tau is proportional to dou v by dou u by dou x or dou u by dou y whole power 1 or something like that. That's only the simplest model that you can use for Newtonian fluids. If you want to use for non-Newtonian fluids, you have to incorporate your model of stress tensor into that and then solve these equations. Then it will automatically change non-Newtonian fluids. Boundary conditions towards microchannel. Okay, tomorrow I'll discuss about 5 to 10 minutes on boundary conditions, and based on that you can understand why do you need boundary conditions and what kind of boundary conditions you need. So I'll discuss this boundary conditions topic in tomorrow's session in the morning.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving your valuable presentation.
Thanks for you guys to give me an opportunity to share my knowledge in this field. I have done some work on compressible flows, but it's only at okay. It's not that great. I can say it's a good work, but not to the extent that it is a game changer. Basically.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
very
sir.
much.
I thank all the participants for being with us. We'll meet tomorrow 11 a.m. I request all the participants to please come online by 10:55.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.